Ascension is a tiny volcanic island lying on the mid-Atlantic ridge. The 35 square miles above the surface of the waves are just the tip of a huge volcano. Ascension is halfway between Africa and South America and halfway between Britain and the Falklands. The island itself is less than 2 million years old and is still scarred by the tremendous forces that created it. Of the 42 extinct volcanoes that make up its surface, Green Mountain is the highest. Some, like the Devil's Riding School, are still filled with layers of fine ash. Only the very summit of the island, hidden by the clouds, can support permanent plant cover. The first task of the early visitors was to find a supply of fresh water. Ascension has no standing water at all. The island first had a permanent population in 1815. A detachment of Marines lived up here at Dampier's Drip, halfway up Green Mountain. Water, once seeped out of the mountainside here, was collected in large stone tanks and then transported down to the rest of the garrison in Georgetown. Later, a pipeline was built to carry water directly from wells bored higher up the mountain. The earliest form of communication used on Ascension was very primitive. Signals emitted from a naval semaphore only had a range of a mile or so. Today, Ascension is the most important communication center in the Atlantic Ocean, linking this remote island not only with the rest of the world, but the moon and space stations. Living conditions for the services have improved too. This newly built complex has a swimming pool, tennis and squash courts. The many ships that have visited the island have brought their share of stowaways. The house mouse was probably a resident here long before the first Marines. It seems to be quite at home here among the prickly pears, feeding on the fruits and seeds. The remarkable adaptability of the house mouse has made it the most widely distributed mammal on Earth, apart from man. There are other creatures that live among the cacti too. Donkeys were brought to Ascension with the first garrison 170 years ago to ferry barrels of water. About 60 now roam the lava flows, living off the sparse grasses and cacti fruits. They share the barren plains with a few sheep, introduced to provide a supply of fresh meat. The last of the goats, descendants of those set free in the 16th century, were shot in 1944 in an effort to preserve the island's flora. Ascension has no native land birds. Common waxbills were introduced from West Africa in the 1860s. Several hundred in flocks of 30 or more now inhabit the lower parts of the island and gardens in Georgetown. The first miners were released over 100 years ago to deal with insect pests. The miners and waxbills are just two of the many species of birds that were requested by the Marines to be sent from Britain. Almost all the plants on Ascension have been brought here by man. The prickly pear cactus was used as a living animal-proof fence. Norfolk Island pines were more of a long-term investment. They made excellent ship's masts. A few plants, though, were growing here long before man arrived. This fern is one of several species, some of which are unique to the island. Ascension's best-known native plant, and one of the rarest in the world, is the little euphorbia. The milky liquid is poisonous, a fact which has probably had a great bearing on the plant's survival. Green Mountain has only been known as Green Mountain for the past 200 years, since the arrival of the plants, and it was up here amid the clouds that the Marines built water catchment areas to collect more precious fresh water. In more recent times, their old barracks were used as a dairy, probably the only cowshed in the world bearing a royal coat of arms. Just below is the island's farm, a valuable source of fresh vegetables and meat. A cattle egret, one of only 3 or 4 in residence.
I think it'd be best then if we take our shoes off.
In a corner of the farm's vegetable plot, a tunnel was built 150 years ago to carry water pipes down from the mountain above. And it was through this tunnel that wildlife filmmakers Cindy Buxton and Annie Price had to travel to reach the peak.
Yeah, amazing tunnel this. It was made by the Royal Marines about 1860, I think.
Incredible, isn't it?
For the getting the water from the other side of the mountain down to Georgetown. Look at the wall up here. Amazing, isn't it? All hand done.
I thought it'd be wetter than this, actually.
Gets a bit wetter later on.
Does it? How long is it?
And it goes on for about 300 yards.
Uh-huh. I wouldn't like to come
All
along.
hand done. Incredible. Right. Oh, look, there's the other end of the tunnel.
Ah. It is a bit creepy.
There it is, nearly there.
Marvellous. Look at that, it's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
All that shiny stuff. Might be a precious stone, you never know. Lovely.
You got all the stuff?
Wow. Yes, I have, yep. I think
Sorry,
so.
did I dazzle you?
No. Nice to have a good bright torch.
Right. Well, here we are.
Good Lord.
Turn the light off. Now, mind the mud.
The tunnel emerges at the other side of the mountain in a steamy, tropical paradise.
I know, it's quite different from the other
The path is shrouded in wild ginger.
Another world.
What's the betting I'd go flat on my face?
The peak itself is covered by a dense forest of bamboo, brought over as seedlings from Kew Gardens in 1847, again at the request of the Marines. Almost at the very summit of Ascension is a circular man-made dew pond, presumably built as a reserve water supply. The water lilies are from South Africa, the goldfish abandoned pets of the previous islanders. But amid the mud and rotting vegetation at the bottom of the pond live some strange creatures. African clawed toads were once used all over the world for pregnancy testing. During the Second World War, a few leftovers from the island's hospital were released into the pond, where conditions were ideal for them. The bamboos were planted here to increase the humidity and encourage rainfall. Today, predicting the weather has become very sophisticated. The rocket will climb to 200,000 feet and as it descends by parachute, information regarding temperature, wind direction and air pressure will be relayed back to the weather station. Occasionally, weather conditions in mid-Atlantic can take an unexpected turn for the worse. Rainfall here is very scant and irregular, around 25 inches a year. But 2 or 3 times during recent history, freak storms have swept the island. The storm started at 8:30 in the morning. It turned out to be the worst storm for nearly 40 years. It lasted for 4 hours, and in that time over 8 inches of rain fell. The damage was enormous. Roads were washed away and buried under several feet of ash and rubble. Electricity and water supplies were totally cut off. Houses were flooded and cars were buried almost axle deep in mud. The fine ash was swept into the sea, clouding the coastal waters for several weeks. The graveyard at Dead Man's Beach was covered in places by over 2 or 3 feet of water. After the rains, grass seeds, lying dormant, often for years, amid the lava, or clinker as it's known locally, burst into life and temporarily transform the barren landscape. The donkeys and sheep are quick to take advantage of this all too brief windfall. Fortunately, the plague of locust-sized grasshoppers that have followed such conditions in the past didn't occur this year. But this amount of rainfall is very rare indeed. Normally, the lava flows are dry and dusty, but still they support a surprising variety of life. The secret of survival here is to be small enough to be able to escape the heat by hiding beneath stones. Several species of ants inhabit the loose, dry earth. Centipedes up to 6 inches long feed on the smaller insects. They have large jaws and a very painful bite. A small lizard, a type of iguanid, made its way to Ascension with cargoes of timber from South America. The lizard's claws are ideal for climbing over and around the loose boulders. But these feet are much more sophisticated. They belong to another lizard that shares the iguanid's habitat. It's a gecko whose ancestors were originally brought over on visiting ships returning from Asia. Until recently, it was believed that only one species of gecko had colonized the island, but a second type, again from Asia, is now known. Nocturnal geckos are frequent visitors to houses, attracted by the insects around the lights. Not all of Ascension's wildlife has been introduced, either deliberately or accidentally, by man. Some have reached and colonized the island without our help. Land crabs were probably the first permanent terrestrial residents. The species is found on several islands in the Atlantic Ocean, their larvae drifting on ocean currents until they reach land. On Ascension, there are several color varieties. The adult crabs are entirely independent of the sea. In fact, they have to be careful not to drown when they make their way down to the coast to lay their eggs. The terns, on the other hand, spend all their time at sea, returning to the island only to lay their eggs. They're officially known as sooty terns, but to mariners they've long been known as wideawakes because of their raucous call. The terns come back to their nesting grounds every 10 lunar months, and their arrival can be predicted to the day. Amid the wideawake fairs, the terns are busy establishing a small plot of lava to call their own. The terns have normally paired up before establishing a nest site. They soon accept Cindy and Annie's presence within the colony. The first eggs appear 2 or 3 weeks after the bird's arrival. A single egg is laid in a shallow depression in the loose earth. A recent estimate suggests about 750,000 wideawakes come to Ascension to breed, even though disturbances are far more regular now than they've ever been. But there are other, more sinister silhouettes in the sky once the chicks have hatched. For frigate birds, the wideawake fairs offer rich pickings. The only thing that stands between them and the newly hatched chicks is the tenacity of the adult terns. All the chicks can do is feed and grow as quickly as possible. They're well camouflaged amid the ash and rocks, provided they keep still. Inevitably, large numbers are taken every season, although this one is proving to be more than a mouthful for the frigate. Three times it's swallowed, and 3 times it's coughed back up, before being dropped and taken in mid-flight by another frigate. The chicks that survive grow rapidly on a diet of small fish and squid, which, unusually for terns, are regurgitated by the adult birds. Birds arriving with fresh supplies have to run the gauntlet of frigates trying to rob them of their catch. It's this piratical lifestyle that's earned the frigate bird its name. But it's not just the chicks that are under constant threat from predators. The adult wideawakes have their enemies too. During the day, the only evidence is the large number of corpses that litter the colony. Some of them have hardly been eaten at all. It's at night, while the colony is roosting, that the predator hunts. Cats were introduced in 1815 to deal with ships' rats. Instead, they found the seabird colonies more inviting. Over 20,000 wideawakes are taken each year. Fortunately, all the birds are at sea outside the breeding season, so the cats starve and their numbers are checked. If the birds were here all the year round, the numbers of cats would increase dramatically and the whole tern colony would be threatened. Four to 6 weeks after hatching, the chicks are fully fledged. Their dark coloration still affords them some protection, although they're now far too big to be taken by the frigates. As in every large breeding colony of animals, oddities occasionally appear, like this pale grey chick, a mutation known to ornithologists as Isabeline. By now, their flight feathers are fully formed and wings are exercised daily. Over the next few weeks, the adults and juveniles will disperse, leaving the fairs empty until their return in 2 or 3 months' time. During that time, they'll live entirely at sea. The nearest land, St. Helena, is over 800 miles away. The shores of Ascension are pounded daily by enormous waves. There's no harbour, few good anchorages, and plenty of wrecks. This steel bark, the Normandy, went down in 1900. But much of Ascension's wealth of animal life lies beneath the waves, so it was here that Cindy and Annie wanted to film next. Mac McDowell and some of his colleagues from the American Air Base have been diving here for some years and have contributed a great deal to our knowledge of the local marine life. A sheltered bay on a calm day is the only way to get into the sea from the coast. The shore plummets 10,000 feet to the seabed, so all the marine life is concentrated within a very narrow strip round the shoreline. Black triggerfish are widely distributed in the Atlantic, but nowhere are they as common as they are around Ascension, where they feed on just about anything and are often referred to as piranhas. The octopus is found in the holes and crannies in the submerged volcanic rock. Deeper down, squirrelfish live in large shoals. Like the octopus, lobster-sized crayfish inhabit crevices and caves all around the island, while on the flatter areas lives the peacock flounder. The stonefish has a highly poisonous dorsal spine. Meanwhile, Mac is busy extracting a conger eel from its hole in the rocks. It's taken a black triggerfish and is swallowing it, whole. Like a snake, its skin is very elastic, so it can swallow prey much larger than the diameter of its head. But the congers aren't the only predators around these shores. Sharks are common. Hammerhead, blue and Galapagos sharks are all found locally, and although not regarded as very dangerous, are still treated with respect. Atlantic bottlenose dolphins swim in the bow waves of the many boats and ships that now come and go. At first glance, it's difficult to distinguish friend from foe. Even the ever-changing environment where shore meets sea provides a habitat for a variety of creatures. Fish, like the sergeant major, are often left stranded in the rock pools, while others, such as the blenny, live here more or less permanently. Those creatures that succumb to the pounding waves provide food for the others. Normally, the urchins are firmly anchored, like eggs in a carton, in holes that they've scraped over a period of years in the rock. As they grow, the holes grow. Octopus are frequently met with in the rock pools. They have incredibly good eyesight. Their eyes are similar to our own. Their remarkable ability to change color to blend in with their background is well known. The sudden flashes of color are more a response to being disturbed. Some creatures have adapted to life on the shoreline, living both in and out of the water. The shore crab, like its land-bound relative, is found around many of the Atlantic's warmer shores. It too has platonic larvae that drift with the ocean currents. But not all of Ascension's rock pools are close to the shore. On the southwest tip of the island, a handful of shallow pools, each no bigger than a dining table, are situated amid the clinker 100 yards or so from the sea. And yet they rise and fall with the tides. The rock in which they lie is very porous, and salt water seeps through underground. They're filled with small corals and strange spherical growths of algae. These pools are the only habitat in the world for two small species of shrimp. They were described as recently as 1970 as being new to science. Although the smaller of the two does have a relative that lives in subterranean pools in Cuba and the Yucatan. The disappearance of vast colonies of seabirds that once nested on Ascension presents no such mystery. All that remains is acre upon acre of guano-covered clinker. The last birds to nest here did so over 100 years ago. Scattered throughout the old colonies is the debris left behind by the guano collectors, employed during the 1920s to dig out the phosphate-rich deposits, the waste product of the 2 to 3 million birds that could be found here at any one time. Within a few years, the project was abandoned and the equipment was left where it lay. The company withdrew because the venture proved uneconomic. The birds left because they were almost exterminated by the cats. The seabirds found sanctuary on Bosun Bird Island, a cat-free haven just off the coast. To reach it, it's necessary to sail from Georgetown, 12 miles away. Bosun Bird Island is a large sea stack. Its 300-foot-high cliffs are very impressive and, at first glance, unassailable. Mac and Tommy Coupe had visited the island on several occasions and had mastered the difficult landing routine.
Right.
Equipment, food and water had to be hauled up to the top of the island. The girls planned to stay for several days.
Okay, Annie? Okay? Yep.
The climb from the landing platform to the summit requires more than a spot of light mountaineering. Some of the ropes were very old and brittle, and what appeared to be solid rock often turned out to be thick deposits of guano built up over the centuries. In all, 10 species of seabird now breed on Bosun Bird Island, although only a fraction of the numbers that once lived on Ascension itself. Unlike the wide-awake terns, these other species breed here all the year round. Presented with a continuous supply of food, the cats on Ascension multiplied to such an extent that they wiped out entire colonies when presumably their own numbers crashed. The frigate birds and white boobies prefer to nest on the island's summit. It was also a convenient place for Cindy and Annie to set up camp, with minimum disturbance to the local inhabitants. Other species of seabirds prefer to nest near the edges of the cliff tops. The island gets its name from the bosun birds that nest there. They're also known as tropic birds, as they're found within the tropics throughout the oceans of the world. They nest in holes and on sheltered ledges where their chicks are safe from the predatory frigates. Two species occur here, the yellow-billed and the red-billed tropic bird. Competition for the best nest sites is intense, and the birds fight and squabble almost incessantly. Several species of seabirds specialize in nesting on the sheer cliffs where there are few ledges and no ropes. With the exception of the wide-awake terns, black noddies are the most numerous birds on Ascension. 75,000 nest here, according to the last count. They breed on tiny guano-encrusted ledges all around the island. The chicks are reared on a flat platform smaller than a saucer. This one has grown just a little too large for the frigates to manage. The species of frigate that lives and breeds here is unique to the island. The world's population of only a few thousand all nest here. Like all frigates, the males have these large red inflatable throat pouches with which they display to females passing overhead. Soon after mating, a large single egg is laid. The job of incubation is shared by both sexes. Some 6 weeks after laying, the egg hatches. What little nest material was gathered is soon blown away. The old equipment left by the guano workers on Bosenbird Island makes for a more unusual nest site. The chicks grow rapidly on a diet of regurgitated fish, mainly flying fish. After 2 months, the chicks are almost as big as their parents. The adults often spend long periods stretched out in the sun, like a squadron of crashed hang gliders on the lower slopes and cliff tops. When they're not sunbathing or tending their chicks, the frigates hang in the air, waiting for other birds returning from fishing trips, so they can give chase and steal their catch. The white tern has reached its nest unscathed. Others have more of a problem. The chick has a slight problem too. Its meal is larger than itself. Almost 10,000 white or masked boobies occupy the plateau at the top of Bosenbird Island. Of all Ascension seabirds, the boobies probably have the most interesting repertoire of behavior. Sky pointing by the male is purely for advertising his presence, not to females in the air, but to those walking along the ground. Mutual preening is very common between members of established pairs. The female has the slightly duller beak. Occasionally, neighboring pairs will spar, male against male, female against female. The majority of eggs are laid in June and July, but egg-laying can occur almost all year round. Incubation, even in this intense heat, can take over 6 weeks. panting is the only way to keep cool. Like the frigates, the boobies feed their young mainly on a diet of flying fish. The young birds are very inquisitive. Playing with a feather or a piece of old cloth helps the youngsters to develop their fish catching and handling techniques. Any piece of cloth attracts their attention. Until now, the chicks' only form of locomotion has been their distinctive waddle, but it's not long before they'll take to the air. The white booby shares its island home with a smaller number of brown boobies, with their distinctive dark hoods. The collection of suitable nesting material is an important part of pair bonding in both species, although they could hardly be said to construct a nest. As evening approaches and Cindy and Annie make notes on the day's filming, the boobies head off along the coast towards Georgetown. A large shoal of small fish has gathered just off Long Beach, and the birds are quick to take advantage. By sunset, the birds have returned to their eggs and chicks on Bosunbird Island. During the night, there's a lot of activity on the same beach. Tracks, like those left by an invading army, lead to the nocturnal visitor. A huge female green turtle has come ashore to lay her eggs, the culmination of one of the greatest feats of navigation in the animal kingdom. The turtles that nest on Ascension have paddled their way halfway across the Atlantic from Brazil, a distance of 1,400 miles, and yet they can locate this tiny island only 7 miles wide. They probably find their way by following the scent of Ascension, carried to South America on the prevailing currents. They mate just offshore from the beaches where they'll nest, and probably the very beaches where they hatched over 20 years ago. Competition for a female is intense, and several males will cluster around her. Several nights later, the female emerges under cover of darkness to lay her eggs. Nesting occurs from January to June, with a peak from February to April. Once she has selected a suitable site, she uses her front flippers to dig out a large hole. Then she uses her hind feet very carefully to scoop out a bucket-sized chamber. It's important that the sand is coarse enough and damp enough to prevent the hole from caving in. Over 100 gleaming white eggs are deposited into the pit. The whole process takes 2 to 3 hours. When the last egg is laid, she then very carefully fills in the hole. Her evening's work at an end, she can return exhausted to the sea. But that's not the end of the story. She'll return on 4 or 5 occasions at intervals of 10 days to lay another 100 or so eggs each time. During the height of the season, all of Ascension's beaches are pitted by thousands of turtle nests. Long Beach, near Georgetown, is over a mile long, and nest den sites are so numerous that females may actually dig up older nests when building new ones. The scene on Ascension's other beaches is much the same. Just offshore, the females try to escape the attentions of the male turtles still patrolling the beaches. The remarkable fact is that during the 2 months the turtles spend at Ascension, and on the journey here and back, they must fast. Their nearest source of food, turtle grass, is on the continental shelf of South America, 1,400 miles away. To the early mariners, the turtles were a valuable source of fresh meat, and they were collected in their hundreds and stored in these holding pens. At the turn of the century, the scene was the same as it is today. Only now it's illegal to kill or even interfere with the turtles or their eggs. Large numbers were transported down to ships at the jetty, and they featured regularly on the officers' menu. Today, the Ascension residents are very proud of their turtles, as this mock motorway sign proclaims. When large amounts of sand were needed in order to construct the new military quarters, a fence was erected before the start of the nesting season to keep out the turtles. The sand was removed from the very top dry parts of the beach to ensure no nests were accidentally dug up. The eggs have no predators on Ascension. Their only threat lies in the enormous waves that pound the beaches, which could easily expose or flood the nests. If all goes well, the first eggs hatch 50 days after laying, 3 feet down in the sand. The young turtles have a special egg tooth at the end of their snout to help them rip open the egg. It takes at least 2 days for the young turtles to make their way to the surface, during which time the large yolk sac is absorbed. They usually wait until nightfall before emerging. Their only predators on the beaches at night are the cats that have proved so destructive to the island's bird life. Once they reach the sea, sharks and other large fish are waiting for them. Of the hundreds of thousands that will hatch every year, only a tiny percentage will survive to maturity. What happens to them during their first few years remained a mystery until very recently. It's now known that they spend much of that time drifting around the ocean among the sargassum weed, feeding on small invertebrates, before becoming vegetarian. Who knows how much the island will have changed and what awaits this little creature when she returns in 20 or 30 years' time to nest on the beaches of this tiny volcanic peak known as Wide Awake Island.